Tonight, another extension or not. The new confusion over Donald Trump's tariff timelines. The amped-up attacks on Canada at the first cabinet meeting, where Elon Musk took center stage.
Without us, Canada can't make it.
And why Trump said this evening he's making Wayne Gretzky a free agent. Trump's warning to Putin and what's in the lucrative mineral deal with Ukraine.
Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright.
Plus, the president's controversial AI video showing him dancing at a Gaza hotel bearing his name. More Canadians revealed their travel disasters at the same resort in Mexico.
They started dropping like flies. They started just really running out of the wedding.
What could have caused this petrifying parking garage collapse in Ottawa? And the sudden loss of an actor who connected with a generation of young fans.
Did you enjoy making the movie?
Yes, I loved making the movie.
What we know about the untimely death of Michelle Trachtenberg.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening. Donald Trump dug into a strategy of keeping Canada guessing when it comes to tariffs today, hinting at a possible extension, but also sending conflicting signals about Canada's progress in meeting Trump's demands. CTV's Judy Trin on the latest mixed messaging.
Without us, Canada can't make it. You know, Canada relies on us 95%. We rely on them 4%.
The insults came after President Donald Trump indicated he's not satisfied with Canada's progress on stopping illegal migration and fentanyl.
But the fentanyl-related things, they're working hard on the border. At the end of that 30 days, they have to prove to the president that they've satisfied him to that regard. If they have,
it's gonna be
then
hard
he'll give them a pause, or he won't. But
it's going to be hard to satisfy.
In a statement, the White House said the scheduled tariffs on Canada and Mexico could change pending negotiations, but as of now are still moving ahead.
Our mission is still to seek, that we don't apply the tariff. That's certainly our mission number one.
So far, Canada has appointed a fentanyl czar. Black Hawk helicopters and drones now monitor the border. More canine teams are sniffing out drugs, and cartels have been designated terror organizations. But Trump is determined to use tariffs to drive business to the U.S. at the expense of Canada.
The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell lumber or anything else into the United States.
The federal government has until March 4th to meet Trump's fentanyl markers, or tariffs could be imposed on all Canadian goods sold to the Americans. On March 12th, additional duties on steel and aluminum are scheduled. Then in April, worldwide reciprocal tariffs could come. The Canadian Labour Congress says Canadians have to brace for the worst-case scenario.
Our estimates are that 1.5 million jobs will leave within the first 12 months if there are the broad-stroke tariffs that we're expecting to start taking place next week.
The federal government says it's preparing a comprehensive financial aid plan to help Canadian businesses and workers get through a long trade war. But so far, few details have been released. Omar.
All right, Judy, thank you. Donald Trump was back on social media tonight, coming to the defense of his friend Wayne Gretzky and clapping back against criticism Gretzky has received over their close ties. Wayne is my friend, and he wants to make me happy, Trump wrote, adding that he's the greatest Canadian of them all, and I'm therefore making him a free agent because I don't want anyone in Canada to say anything bad about him. Trump goes on to say that Gretzky supports Canada the way it is, as he should, even though it's not nearly as good as it could be as part of the greatest and most powerful country in the world. Donald Trump also used his first full cabinet meeting to praise the work of his billionaire cost cutter Elon Musk and talk about a key meeting and a deal with Ukraine. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbin has more.
As the war rages on in Ukraine, an economic deal is on the table that could lead to peace. President Donald Trump says he will share Ukraine's mineral wealth and natural resources. Payback, Trump says, for billions in U.S. military aid.
President Zelensky is going to be coming on Friday. We're going to be signing an agreement which will be a very big agreement.
But forget about Ukraine joining NATO, Trump says, repeating Kremlin talking points. That's why this war started. And what about protection for Ukraine?
Well, I'm not going to make security guarantees beyond very much. We're going to have Europe do that.
Trump claims Russia has to give up something too.
Will he have to make concessions, President Putin?
Yeah, he will. He's going to have to.
One deal almost done, on to another. Trump shared this AI-generated video, his vision of a Gaza getaway, resorts, skyscrapers, golden statues, and a Trump hotel, of course. His controversial plan would expel 2 million Palestinians condemned by the United Nations as ethnic cleansing.
We have cut billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Looking to save money, too, Trump has tasked Elon Musk as his enforcer. An unelected billionaire is taking a chainsaw approach to the federal government, slashing jobs and contracts.
This country has gotten bloated and fat and disgusting and incompetently run.
Musk admits they've made mistakes, firing critical workers like nuclear weapons experts and cutting Ebola prevention programs.
And taking a lot of flack and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. I mean, I'd like to stack them up, But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt.
And tonight, a new government memo is telling federal workers to prepare for mass layoffs as Trump warns 1 million of them are on the bubble. Omar?
Joy Melvin in Washington. Joy, thank you. To politics in Canada and new signs tonight, the Liberals are experiencing a rebound in support, catching up to the Conservatives, whose lead is shrinking. CTV's Rachel Aiello on the numbers and a key countdown.
Prime Minister, what have you heard? Justin Trudeau's days as Prime Minister are numbered, and the decision on who should replace him is now in the hands of the party faithful. Advanced online voting in the Liberal leadership race began this morning. Registered party members now have until March 9th to cast their ballots. After leveling some pointed jabs at her fellow Liberal leadership candidates in last night's debate, Karina Gold said today if she wins, she'd find a place for her rivals in cabinet.
We need Mark Carney when it comes to the economy. We need Chrystia Freeland when it comes to foreign affairs. And we need Frank Bayless when it comes to health.
While the four contenders faced off on who would be best to take on U.S. President Donald Trump and their main conservative opponent,
who's the worst person to stand up to Donald Trump? It's Pierre Poilievre.
They stopped short of attacking each other in the debates. This at a time when the latest Nanos numbers show that over the last month, the Liberals have considerably narrowed the Conservatives' lead.
For all intents and purposes, it's a horse race right now and a coin toss.
Keeping their pressure on perceived frontrunner Mark Carney, today the Conservatives pounced on a comment he made in a post-debate scrum. The Conservatives accuse Carney of lying about his involvement in a decision to relocate the Canadian headquarters of an asset firm that he chaired to New York.
We can't trust what Mark Carney says.
In a statement to CTV News, Carney's campaign shot back, stating Canadian jobs were not impacted by the move. But this war of words may be indicative of the face-off coming in the next federal election, with Nanos telling me today that that vote may no longer be a question about change. Rather, who Canadians think is best placed to take on Trump. Omar?
All right, Rachel, thank you. The newspaper that made a name by holding power to account when it exposed the Watergate scandal is making headlines of its own tonight after its billionaire owner ordered a major shift to the paper's opinion section. Jeff Bezos, who attended Donald Trump's inauguration last month, says the paper will only publish opinion stories on personal liberties and free markets and not publish opposing viewpoints, a move prompting the paper's editorial page editor to resign. And the White House is defying a century-old tradition by hand-picking which reporters and outlets cover events with the president, a decision that the White House Correspondents Association used to make. The move follows the White House decision last week to remove one of the world's largest wire services, the Associated Press, from pool coverage, prompting the AP to sue. Today, together with Reuters and Bloomberg, the three outlets issued a statement saying, in part, it is essential in a democracy for the public to have access to news about their government from an independent free press. We believe that any steps by the government to limit the number of wire services with access to the president threatens that principle. Media access to elected people's representatives also a focus here in Canada. Case in point, an announcement by Nova Scotia's Premier that's drawing attention. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth explains.
Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston has delivered an edict. No more reporter interview scrums at the legislature. Media availability has been moved to this room across the street. Houston says the change was made to improve access for media members not in the Halifax area.
By moving the scrums, I guess, probably 60 feet from where they were to this room, there's technology in here that will allow reporters to phone in.
The practice of interviewing politicians at the legislature goes back generations to before Confederation. This process in Nova Scotia will only involve the governing Progressive Conservatives. Other parties will continue to do scrums with reporters at the legislature. The opposition NDP accuses the Premier of limiting accountability and access to public information, and they say this is connected to the shifting political tone in the U.S.
I think we're seeing this same kind of demonization of the media south of the border. I think we're seeing it across the country, particularly in conservative jurisdictions.
Political science professor Laurie Turnbull says this situation does ring familiar.
It's not necessarily the same thing as the Associated Press not being invited to the White House because they won't recognize the Gulf of America. But at the same time, I think either a politician believes in freedom of the press and access of the press, or they don't.
Premier Houston says outside of politicians and reporters, most people don't care.
It's not something that is keeping most Nova Scotians awake.
Turnbull argues it's a gamble that could backfire because many voters see the legislature as a place where politicians are held accountable by the media. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Halifax.
A significant breakthrough tonight in the Gaza ceasefire deal as Hamas hands over the bodies of 4 hostages to the Red Cross. Israel is now expected to release hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. It delayed that over the weekend, citing Hamas's handling of hostage releases. The exchanges were a part of phase 1 of the ceasefire deal. Potential human remains have been discovered at a landfill north of Winnipeg. The RCMP and Manitoba's coroner have been called in to investigate the possible remains at the Prairie Green landfill. Search efforts began late last year for the remains of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron, 2 of 4 women murdered by serial killer Jeremy Skibicki in 2022. More Canadians are sharing their travel horror stories from a resort in Mexico where they say they became violently sick. CTV's Andrew Johnson on the nightmare another victim endured and how you can protect yourself.
A beautiful couple and the destination wedding of their dreams. But behind the camera, all was not well with their guests.
They started dropping like flies. They started just really running out of the wedding.
90 people flew down to Mexico to celebrate with Quebec's Stephen Pontarelli and his wife. He says 80 of them ended up sick.
And I literally had one guest that passed out and broke part of his cheekbone on a sink from puking so much and wound up breaking 3 fingers at the same time and had to be rushed to the hospital.
Pontarelli claims staff at Santos Playa Car had no interest in offering support. Bottled water was being sold for $12 US, and eventually the water in the resort was turned off.
People are in their rooms, involuntary, throwing up and going to the washroom, but yet you can't flush the toilets or you can't even wash your hands or just sink. It literally was a disaster.
Pontarelli is just the latest Canadian to come forward to CTV News describing a similarly nightmarish scene at the same resort over the past couple of weeks. We reached out to Santos Playa Car but have not received a response. The resort claims online it follows strict cleaning and hygiene protocols and that the health and safety of guests is its top priority. One doctor says you're often rolling the dice at an all-inclusive resort.
Everybody's touching everything. In warm weather, if things are sitting out, if things may not be properly refrigerated and chilled appropriately, you are exposing yourself to risk.
Here's what he looks for.
If you see people are practicing good hygiene and there's Purell next to the food preparation areas and people are using it and they're not sharing utensils, those are all good things.
A travel expert suggests making sure you have adequate medical insurance, and if you do get sick, start documenting.
Just have a detailed summary
and then send an email or make a complaint after the fact, and just be polite, and then maybe there will be some kind of compensation.
Experts warn resorts and tour operators may try to avoid taking the blame for your troubles, but there can be compensation if you push hard enough. Omar.
All right, Andrew, thank you. Dramatic moments today in the nation's capital where dozens of vehicles are still trapped after a parking garage partially collapsed. That's the stunning moment when part of the top floor came crashing down, sending slabs of concrete to the ground below. The cause of the collapse is still under investigation, but heavy snow may have been a factor. No injuries have been reported. Coming up, caught up in the clutches of a fraudster.
I used all my rent money. I borrowed from my mother, and I was panicking.
The scam that conned her and what you need to look out for. Plus, uncertified teachers leaving classrooms. Why that's a growing problem across Canada. Canadian officials are tracking a massive rise in the number of so-called work scams, online schemes that hook victims in with a fake job and end up costing them big money. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin spoke to one woman who's lost tens of thousands.
Clicking on an online job ad took Ashley Valentini down a spiral she is still trying to escape.
And then at some point, I didn't have enough money. I used all my rent money. I borrowed from my mother, and I was panicking.
Valentini is a mom of 4, including 14-month-old twin girls.
Seuss.
She works in a school but wanted to take on a second job she could do from home, and she found an offer online.
Basically, you have to rate and comment on different travel packages, tour packages, data optimization, so that when people book things, it'll pop up.
It turned out to be an elaborate scheme. A trainer communicating via WhatsApp eventually asked Valentini to send in money to reserve tour packages she would rate. And she did get money back the first time. She put in $10 and pocketed $220 through a crypto account.
So that was really what made me just keep going, because I'm like, I'm gonna get the money.
And at this point, you're desperate?
And at this point, well, when I finally gave up, I had already sent $11,651.
In increasingly desperate WhatsApp exchanges, Valentini tells the trainer she has no money left. You can try to apply for a loan from your bank. The trainer replies several times. In 2024, $47 million was reported lost to so-called work or task scams. In 2022, that was just $7 million. The spike is driven in part by the number of remote job seekers and a rise in crypto transactions.
You see, on a sophisticated website that your money's growing with time, but unfortunately, at the end of time, you're not able to get that money back.
The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre has tips to avoid scams, including being alert to any red flags and looking very closely at all details like domain names. To Valentini and her family, the losses have been devastating. She's trying to raise money and looking for another job.
I stole my mother money, and it's, I feel, anyways.
Valentini says she felt it was her duty to speak out to prevent others from living the same nightmare. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Still ahead. The lesson behind the growing issue of uncertified teachers in Canadian classrooms. A steady stream of prayers for the Pope outside his hospital in Rome. Francis is still in critical but stable condition, with the Vatican adding he sat upright again today as he receives treatment for double pneumonia. It is a problem affecting many across Canada, teacher shortages. New Brunswick's Teachers Association is sounding the alarm as the number of teachers not certified to teach is growing. CTV's Sarah Plowman is digging into why this is happening.
In classrooms across Canada, a growing trend. A teacher without an education degree, without a teaching certificate. one response to a shortage of teachers.
It just can't be the answer going forward when we need more teachers.
New Brunswick's Teachers Association is raising concerns as that province now has nearly 200 uncertified teachers, up from more than 130 a year ago. People who've been vetted but aren't formally taught or certified to teach.
We're thankful they're there and they're filling the role because we'd be in dire straits without them, but they certainly need support.
In Quebec, there are even more. As of December, more than 9,100 uncertified teachers were working in classrooms.
Every province and territory are using unqualified personnel in schools. Everyone, from varying degrees.
The Canadian Teachers Federation says Canada has a retention and recruitment crisis. They point to the workload and working conditions.
So we need to reduce class sizes. We need to have more resource teachers to help students with needs. And we need to give teachers time.
New Brunswick has seen its population grow, and with it, an influx of students. The union says nearly 1,000 teachers will retire from the Anglophone district within 3 years. Universities are adding seats, but that takes time and money.
I think it's something that needs to be spread across all of the schools of education in New Brunswick.
New Brunswick's Minister of Education says the province has come up with a strategy to recruit and retain teachers. That will be released in the coming weeks. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
Still ahead, remembering Michelle Trachtenberg, what police are saying about the loss of the beloved actress. A generation of young fans is mourning the loss tonight of Michelle Trachtenberg, who became a child star at the age of 10 and went on to appear in hits that were especially popular with millennials. Police discovered her body this morning inside her luxury Manhattan apartment and say her death is not being investigated as suspicious. She landed roles in shows all the kids wanted to watch, as Buffy's sister, Dawn, in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Gossip Girl, playing slightly evil Georgina Sparks.
I'm not her spy, you idiot. I am her.
She got her start young.
Yeah, I have the French toast.
But it was her role as Harriet the Spy that transformed her into a child celebrity.
What are you writing? Notes. Can you read them? Can you read this?
She reportedly recently got a liver transplant, and her photos on social media sparked concern from fans who were worried about her health. At one point, Trachtenberg responding, "Fun fact, this is my face, not malnutrition, no problems." Today, the creators of Gossip Girl remembered her talent, an actress who turned her character into an iconic fan favorite, adding that she was a delight to have on set. And from her former co-star Rosie O'Donnell.
Did you enjoy making the movie?
Yes, I loved making the movie.
This reflection. I loved her very much. She struggled the last few years. I wish I could have helped. Michelle Trachtenberg was 39 years old. Heartbreaking, and that's a snapshot of this Wednesday for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and see you tomorrow.